Hello, all, and welcome to a brand new official FanTeam podcast brought to you by FanTeam, the biggest daily fantasy site in Europe. This podcast will be available as a video on the FanTeam YouTube channel and available as an audio podcast on all major podcast libraries, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. Just search for official FanTeam podcast from wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Andrew, and today I'm joined by a fantasy football expert, Holly Shand, who will be talking us through her FanTeam Gameweek 1 team and strategy as she chases down that first place prize of €200,000. Holly, it's great to have you on the very first official FanTeam podcast. How are you, and how is your planning coming along for FanTeam?
I'm very well, Andrew. I'm really excited actually to get underway this season, and I really enjoyed playing the season-long game last season. And the fact that the prize pool's gone up to €1 million, like, it just makes it really exciting.
Yes. And how are you finding it, just in your years of FPL skills to FanTeam?
I mean, it's pretty easy because the formats are very, very similar. So last season, I just essentially started with my Game Week 1 team in FPL, transferred it directly over, and that's roughly the plan for this season as well. So I'm hoping that a good FPL season will translate into a good fan team season as well.
I think I'll be in a position, hopefully, to kind of manage my FPL team more or less alongside FanTeam and be able to kind of use the same players and strategies. So really enjoying it. So for those who haven't seen it, and for those to serve as a reminder, the prize pool for FanTeam is €1 million, a world record and life-changing €200,000 first prize, with huge cash prizes went all the way down to 5,659th place, meaning everyone in around 13 entry finish in the money. Ollie, have you ever seen anything like this before?
No, it's absolutely crazy. When you think last year that the total prize pot was €250,000, and now the winner this year will get €200,000. Like, it can literally change your life, that amount of money. It's crazy. Fingers crossed.
Indeed.
It could be my year.
So if you want to play FanTeam, the game is live. If you want to take a look at the rules and prizes for yourself, our YouTube watchers can click on the top link in the description below. Our podcast listeners can go to fanteam.com and go to the EPL €1 million 2021 link, where you can create your own team and compete for the massive prizes on offer. To play FanTeam, there is a €25 entry. It's for over 18s only, and be gambleaware.org. So, Holly, let's take a look at your team so far. Could you talk us through your picks first for our podcast listeners?
Tend to build my team around the premium players to start off with, and obviously with the blank for Manchester City and Manchester United in game week 1, it has made it a little bit trickier, but then in some ways it's easier because there's less premiums to pick from. So Salah and Aubameyang were just the first names on my team sheet. Really, it's just obvious to have them. You've got the main captain and vice captain for game week 1 in there, but then there was a couple of other premiums that I wanted to squeeze in. So I've gone with Timo Werner because I'm really excited to see how Chelsea look this season. I'm expecting big things from them, and to go with who will hopefully be the central striker seems like the wise choice. I mean, I would have maybe gone Pulisic if he was available for game week 1, but there's question marks there, so I've gone with Werner instead. And then I've taken a little bit of a gamble on Son Heung-min, but he's likely to become maybe a Bruno Fernandes when it comes to game week 2 or game week 3. I've got a little bit of money left in the bank to give me a bit of flexibility for the price changes. But I love the fact on FanTeam that any price rises that you earn, you get to keep it all, which is different from FPL, which means as you get later into the season, it's much easier to cram in as many premiums as you want, basically.
Absolutely. And in terms of the chips as well, so those who play FPL, I'm not a fan of the chips because I think when they're messing your team up and around just to try and get these kind of extra hikes, and it kind of spoils the balance of your team and the strategy. What are your thoughts on not having chips in FanTeam?
I prefer it. I just feel like it's a purer form of the game, and it lends itself to people that are really into their FPL. They've got a lot of experience of playing FPL when we didn't have the chips, and that triple captainship, I've never had any luck with it. It's been miserable for me. So it actually feels quite liberating, the fact that you've not got to worry about it for the entire season.
A lot of FPL managers on Sadio Mane last year when he double game week and he went off injured.
Yeah, that was me.
I was fortunate because I put it on Salah, so I
Oh,
came up smelling the roses on that
it's
one.
still too raw for me, that.
Unbelievable. So in terms of your defence, Holly, you've gone for Van Dijk, Alexander Arnold, David Luiz, Bertrand. Just talk us a bit about that.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to do is approach FPL and FanTeam this season by having some price points in there. So I wanted to have two premium defenders, and Trent was going to be the first one. And then I was looking at the pricing on FanTeam. Van Dijk only 6 million. He was a no-brainer. In FPL, it could be Matt Doherty, but here Van Dijk's just the obvious option because Liverpool have got great opening fixtures from a defensive perspective, particularly game week 1. So it seemed like a bargain to double up on that defence for an extra 6 million. And then just trying to target some defences that I'm expecting to perform well through the season. So that's why I've gone with an Arsenal defender and a Southampton defender in David Luiz and Ryan Bertrand. And both of those are capable of attacking returns here and there as well. And both have shown, a lot of promise towards the end of last season. And, they've brought in more personnel for this campaign. I've actually doubled up on the Southampton defence as well because I've got Alex McCarthy in goal. I don't like spending a lot of money in defence, so he seemed like a great option. And kindly for us on FanTeam, Carl Darlow is pretty cheap on there as well. So he's the sub goalkeeper. It's nice to have a set and forget like you would in FPL, but just have that flexibility on the bench because we don't know what's going to happen this season, how it's going to pan out with, potential postponements or players being missing for a couple of weeks due to isolation. So it's nice to have a little bit of insurance on the bench. And then I've gone with Tyrick Mitchell as the 4 million bench filler, but I'm not 100% on that yet. Obviously, we've only got 4 days to go, but a lot could change in that 4 days. And Mitchell's sort of a short-term pick at the moment because when Van Aanholt is fit, which he probably should be by the first international break, then Mitchell's place is going to be under threat. So that could pay for a transfer down the line. So if a better 4 million defender emerges before Saturday's deadline, then he could be changed. He's more of a filler for now.
Okay, and the final players in your team you haven't mentioned, you've got Stuart Armstrong, midfield, and Callum Wilson up front, which is a really interesting pick. He burnt a lot of FPL managers at Bournemouth last year. He was fantastic the year before. What are your thoughts on those?
Well, Bournemouth were just a bit off kilter last season, weren't they? And the fact that Ryan Fraser spent most of the season sulking didn't help that cause. And Wilson, struggled to get into the team at the back end of the season. But that duo of Wilson and Fraser at Newcastle United, alongside Saint Maximin, I'm quite excited about. And I know that they're going to struggle defensively, but they've got the firepower there in attack that they haven't had for quite a number of seasons now. So I've just took a bit of a gamble on Wilson, but I like Newcastle's opening fixtures, so it just seemed like a risk worth taking at the moment. I'd kind of been toying with Mitrovic as well, but I prefer to trust in Newcastle United more than Fulham as things stand right now.
So how similar is the team to your kind of FPL game week 1?
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, I've got Salah, Aubameyang and Werner in my FPL squad. I'm still toying on whether to have Bruno Fernandes on the bench for game week 1 or have Son and make the switch for game week 2. And that's the thing that I kind of like about FanTeam, because you know when you've got those 50-50 decisions in FPL and you're not sure which way do I go, you can play it one way on FanTeam and you can play it the other way on FPL. And I'm actually tempted to just put in another entry on FanTeam for game week 1, which is exactly the same as this team, and run them side by side. And then when I get to the next 50-50 junction, then make a decision one way or the other on the different teams. And then you can keep exploring how that, influences your lineup as the season goes by.
Absolutely, because as we know now, FPL have said you can only have one team. The great thing about FanTeam, what makes it really have an unlimited amount, and as you mentioned there's a lot of different kinds of strategies you can take. You can have kind of 9 or 10 players the same, and have maybe a Salah in one, a Mane in another. You could have another team where you captain Salah in one and captain Aubameyang in another, so there's a lot of different kinds of variation. There's also the massive advantage on FanTeam as well of being able to eventually put a team in late as well, because up to game week 5 you do get 70% of the average points up to that time. Is that a tactic which you will be using at all, Holly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually this season it could be quite powerful, especially with the blank game week 1. Now, I think last season I put in a fan team entry, a late entry in game week 2 and game week 3, and probably for the first half of the season, those teams were ranked way lower than the 2 that I started with in game week 1. But as we got towards the end of the season, they drastically flew up the rankings. So this season, I think I'll definitely have 1 or 2 entries for game week 1, but I'm definitely going to be putting in at least 2 entries for game week 2, because it's essentially like having a third wild card. And when we've got 2 huge teams that are absent from game week 1, and Burnley and Aston Villa as well, who, even the Burnley defence I'm interested in, and would have had them in my game week 1 squad if they're available. Being able to essentially have a third wild card for the sake of a few points is going to be really, really helpful, because there's so many unknowns still. And the other problem we've got this season that we haven't had for the last 2 seasons, the transfer window's still open until the international break at the end of game week 4. So that's why I've had like Ruben Vinagre has been in my FPL team and my fan team side, only 4 million. And he looked great. But then this week it suddenly emerged that he could be moving elsewhere. And then that's an extra transfer that you've got to do. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be plugging away with the late entries, because it's a season-long game, isn't it? We've got 38 game weeks of action, and to be slightly down on the points for the first few weeks, but with an extra wild card, how much do you value a third wild card in FPL? 50 points?
In terms of wildcards, Holly, have you got any kind of early thoughts on when you're likely to use your wildcard? Are you plotting a kind of early one, or keeping it as long as you can?
I think the aim is to keep it as long as I can, but you've got to be flexible. So if I end up getting to that first international break and I'm looking at my side and there's players that have moved away from the Premier League, or other players have come in that are likely to displace them in a starting 11, then I'm not afraid to use it early if I need to.
And what are the other players mentioned about having the other team haven't got this one? So I'm personally very excited about Havertz, who just signed for Chelsea. He comes in at 8.5 million in FanTeam. Is he likely to be in one of your FanTeam teams?
Yeah, probably. I think the problem with Chelsea right now is we don't quite know how they're going to line up. And certainly for game week 1, they may not have the full range of players available, with Pulisic and Ziyech potentially missing the first game through various injuries. So they're a team that I've certainly got my eye on. And there's a few other teams in the league as well that I'm really interested in. I'd be really interested in their players if I knew that they were playing a specific position. So take, for example, Arsenal in the Community Shield, and Nketiah was starting up front, Saka was starting in the front 3. And then in goal as well, is it going to be Martinez or is it going to be Bernd Leno that's going to get the goalkeeping shirt? I could easily, enter a team in, game later for game week 1 or game week 2 that's got a lot of Arsenal and Chelsea players in, once I've had that insight on how they're going to look throughout the season.
I noticed in your squads, I mentioned that Man United and Man City haven't got a gaming game. And have you got a plan to get in their players, 2 or 3?
Yes, I do. And I think for FanTeam specifically, it's going to be a case of maybe transferring out Son and Salah in favour of a Manchester United attacker and a Manchester City attacker, because I feel like Bruno Fernandes and Kevin De Bruyne are the safe picks for the season. And given we've got Aubameyang as a striker in FanTeam, I think he's probably likely to keep his place in my squad for longer, or be switched to a Kane or a Vardy in time, which means that I need to be a bit more flexible with my premium midfield slots. So Salah and Son could easily be Fernandes and De Bruyne by game week 3, but I've got that flexibility. I've got 500,000 in the bank, and you know, if Son and Salah start the season well, then I may have to rethink and maybe play an early wildcard to get in Manchester City and Manchester United attackers. But I've got that flexibility for now. I don't think there's a lot more we can do. But, you know, if I'm putting in a late entry in game week 2 with a lot of City and United attackers in, I may be happy having a squad that's entered into the competition that isn't as heavy on those two sides, because, you know, the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal and Spurs could be, you know, title contenders this season anyway.
And in terms of your captaincy for our watchers, we put it on Salah and vice captain in Aubameyang.
I felt like Salah over Aubameyang was the obvious move, but every time I go on, you know, Twitter or have a look in the fantasy community about what people are thinking, Aubameyang seems to be winning against Salah about 2-1 at the moment in terms of popularity. Now, I know the Leeds supporters are quite confident in their ability in the Premier League, but I just think Salah's got a home game and Aubameyang's got an away game, and Liverpool are a lot better side than Arsenal at the moment. So that's kind of the main thing for me. And I know that Salah's not been great in pre-season, but it's pre-season, and come game week 1, he missed out on the Golden Boot last season, and he was very, very good last season. If you look at his underlying stats, he didn't really put a foot wrong, and it was just a case of maybe just trying a little bit too hard at the end of the season meant that he had a lot of shots, but not all of them either hit the target or went in. So I don't know. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Salah. I never really trust in Aubameyang because he's let me down in seemingly easy fixtures before. So yeah, it was just an obvious one for me, Salah over Aubameyang. But I know that a lot of talk is the other way around. So what are you thinking for your team? I'm assuming you're going to have Salah and Aubameyang in it.
No, I'm not. So
Are you not?
No.
Ooh.
So my plan. So I'm actually planning an early wild card for various reasons. You know, we've had the COVID news of players like Mahrez and Laporte. Obviously, had the news about Foden and Greenwood, and I was planning early wild card anyway after game week 1, but I've actually moved it now to after game week 2
right.
because of this news. But I'm not going to captain Salah in game week 1. So I'm in the Aubameyang camp for game week 1. I think that Aubameyang just looks like the form player in the league. Scores basically every game he plays at the moment. I do think Leeds will put up a bit of resistance against Liverpool, and that's why I'm going for Aubameyang as captain. I'm not going to captain Salah game week 1. I'm certainly not going to captain him next week away to Chelsea. And what that kind of allows me to do then, not having Salah, it allows me to upgrade a defender. So, you know, let's use the example there of David Luiz to either, you know, Robertson or Doherty or someone like that, and would also allow me in your team to upgrade Armstrong, someone like Havertz or someone like that. So I'm going for a bit more of a balance. It's a bit of a risk, but I never like spending a lot of money on players I'm not going to captain. I just don't. I personally think that they can be matched elsewhere. You know, this is what's brilliant about fantasy football, you know, and FanTeam. So many different strategies. No one knows, right, what's going to happen. It's all probability.
Yeah.
May the best person win. So thank you so much, Holly, for joining me and for hearing your first draft. Looks like a brilliant draft, and thanks for all your thoughts, you know, team on your strategy. And best of luck to you for the coming season. That is it from us for this episode. If we have whetted your appetite enough to give FanTeam a go, remember it's capped at 75,000 entries. So to start drafting your team, make sure you click in the link at the top of the description now. Thank you again, Holly, for joining me in this first episode. We hope to have you back on very, very soon. Remember, if you liked what you watched, please press the like button and remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And if you're listening on a podcast, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. Our website is www.fanteam.com and our Twitter handles are at FanTeam Official and at FanTeam_UK. Give us a follow for regular game updates and for entry giveaways and for this €1 million competition, as well as lots of other FanTeam competitions too. So on this podcast channel, starting from next week, we will be reviewing the FanTeam Monster, which happens every weekend. And we'll be back very soon. Until then, thank you and goodbye for now.